In today's video, we get to see penguins waddling back to freedom and a captive bird that went extinct in the wild. Hansi spray toad. Hansi spray toads are an extremely specialized species. To escape having their eggs carried away by the spray from the gorgeous, tremendous waterfalls, it has adapted to giving birth to fully developed live young. It has the lowest range of any tetrapod or four-legged vertebrate on the planet, a mere 5 acres. The Hansi spray toad is small enough to fit on a coin and weighs only a few grams. Meanwhile, its young are small enough to fit on the head of a pin. Unfortunately, an outbreak of the amphibian illness chirtid fungus occurred in 2005, decimating amphibian populations all over the world. The population of Hansi spray toads plummeted from 20,000 to 0, and the species was declared extinct in the wild. Fortunately, before they were entirely eradicated from the Hansi Gorge, the surviving 499 individuals were relocated from the wild to U.S. zoos for captive breeding. Staff at the zoo had to learn how to properly raise and grow a population of this toad in captivity. And with a hard enough effort, the numbers started to grow, and the species was returned into its native habitat with a new sprinkler system. Zelushka. The Russian Far East serves as a scenario for a Cinderella native, with Cinderella being a tiger. According to the Wildlife Conservation Society, an orphaned, starving, frostbitten cub was saved in the winter of 2012, rehabilitated and released, and is now possibly mating and recolonizing previous tiger territory. Zelushka was discovered by environmentalists working in Russia's Far East in the winter of 2012. She was spotted alone, most likely as a result of her mother's death at the hands of poachers. She was brought by hunters to a wildlife inspector of the regional Primorsky Wildlife Department and treated with veterinary treatment at the Regional Agricultural Academy, including the amputation of a third of her frostbitten tail. Zelushka's home for the following year and 15 months was a Russian Federal Tiger Rehabilitation Center established with technical help from WCS's Bronx Zoo General Curator Dr. Pat Thomas. In the spring of 2013, Zelushka was returned to the wild at Bostock Reserve. GPS and camera trap technology were used to track her movements. There was clear evidence of successful predation on wild boar, badgers, and red deer after investigating sites in the field where she had gone. Jala the orangutan. Jala the orangutan was returned to the wild by Indonesian conservation groups. This happened after he became trapped in a nearby village. The animal was examined and given a clean bill of health before being released. Rescuers then carried Jala through the forest, loaded him into a boat, and transported him to a Borneo conservation area where he was released. According to International Animal Rescue, which assisted in Jala's recovery and release, the apes are in a dangerous spot. This is due to the fact that their habitat is dwindling due to land usage. However, Jala should be safe in the conservation forest. Jala will have his pick of vegetation to forage because there aren't many orangutans. The location is also remote from any settlements. According to the Environment and Forest Ministry, other unique sites have also been set aside for orangutans within Tenagupa to improve their chances of survival. Bornean orangutans are listed as endangered by the World Wildlife Fund. There's an estimated 104,700 Bornean orangutans left now, down from 230,000 a century ago. Arabian oryx. This antelope, which has long, straight horns and a striking facial characteristic, used to wander the Arabian Peninsula. By the early 1970s, however, the Arabian oryx had been driven to extinction in the wild. With oryx numbers already in decline, the Fauna Preservation Society initiated Operation Oryx in the early 1960s to conserve the species. The Phoenix Zoo in the US began a successful captive breeding program with just 9 oryx obtained from the wild. Arabian oryx were reintroduced into the deserts of central Oman in the early 1980s as the breeding program developed. The species has been reintroduced to Saudi Arabia, Jordan, and the United Arab Emirates, and there's now over 1,000 left in the wild. The oryx was downlisted from endangered to vulnerable as a result of a collaborative conservation effort. This includes the efforts of local governments, zoos, and conservation organizations. The rare creatures have found refuge on the island of Serbani Yas. Serbani Yas, located west of Abu Dhabi, is home to a major wildlife reserve with species from Arabia, Asia, and Africa roaming freely. Serbani Yas was established in the 70s, and rigorous ecological efforts transformed it into a man-made heaven for wild animals. Today, the reserve represents the region's ambition for a sustainable future. It's also an excellent sight to watch the gorgeous Arabian oryx running free for the first time in years. Penguins. This touching video shows 12 rescued penguins being released back into the sea after being found emaciated and dehydrated. On the 16th of June 2022, Mundo Marino Foundation stated that the 12 Magellanic penguins were reintroduced to the sea together to maximize their chances of survival and ability to continue their voyage. On the morning of June 15, 2022, the release took place on the beaches of San Clemente del Toyo on Argentina's Atlantic coast. Mundo Marino is based in San Clemente, where it also manages Argentina's largest aquarium. The touching video shows some of the penguins being rescued before being cared for by animal rescue organizations. Before being carried to a beach and released from a cage onto the sand, the Magellanic penguins can be seen receiving medical attention and healing at the Mundo Marino facility under the supervision of the Foundation staff. Then, with the encouragement from their humane caregivers, the seabirds can be seen tentatively waddling into the ocean. Golden Lion Tamarind. This little monkey, located only in Rio de Janeiro State, Brazil, was driven to extinction in the 1960s and 1970s. Deforestation and the pet trade limited the population to a few hundred individuals until over 150 zoos banded together to conserve the species. They began a global captive breeding program, which, in conjunction with efforts by Brazilian environmentalists to safeguard its forest habitat, has contributed to an increase in the population of wild golden lion tamarinds to over 3,500. Sometimes locking animals up for long periods of time is necessary, like in the case of the tamarins here. Golden lion tamarins are little sociable monkeys from South America with a gorgeous reddish-gold coat and a long backswept mane. Golden lion tamarins are small monkeys that weigh 17 to 24 ounces and measure 6 to 10 inches long with a tail that's 12 to 15 inches long. Male and females have similar physical characteristics and sizes. Spider monkeys. 9 spider monkeys were rescued from an illegal zoo in Peru and returned to the rainforest. According to Animal Defenders International, one of the organizations that assisted in the monkeys' rescue, the spider monkeys had likely spent the majority, if not all, of their lives at the zoo. They were raised to entertain zoo guests after being unlawfully smuggled in the wild. When rescuers came, they discovered the monkeys in deplorable conditions. They were kept in a small cage made of broken wire mesh. On the wire, some monkeys had been hurt. There was no grass, no trees, or other natural components to speak of. The 7 adult spider monkeys and the 2 infants were sedated the day of the rescue, and the containers were meticulously loaded for the journey. They began their journey from the zoo to the port via automobile. They then rode down the Madre de Dios River in the Amazon rainforest for almost an hour until they arrived at the private reserve. Volunteers and staff members unloaded the animals at the reserve. They then walked 1.5 miles into the forest, wading through marshes to reach a safe, sheltered location where the monkeys could be released. Now it's time for the day's best pick. The tortoise in the photo looks so huge and dangerous that it's understandable why it's held captive. However, tortoises that large don't exist, but there are indeed some tortoises that are in captivity. Fernandina giant tortoise. On February 17, 2019, the Giant Turtle Restoration Initiative identified a female Fernandina giant tortoise on her namesake's island. She's said to be over 100 years old, and not one of her species has been seen since 1906. This means she spent the majority of her extinction hiding out. The presence of tracks and scents around Fernandina Island suggests she's not alone. This lucky girl will be safe from the unexpected lava flows of Fernandina and the fearsome Galapagos hawks at the Fausto Lorena Breeding Center. In the 19th century, whalers and buccaneers decimated tortoise populations. The Fernandina gigantic tortoise, on the other hand, was thought to have gone extinct as a result of volcanic eruptions on the island. According to the Galapagos Conservancy, the giant tortoise population in the Galapagos Islands is now just 10 to 15% of what it was in the past, when it numbered between 200,000 and 300,000 individuals. Fernanda is now at the Galapagos National Park Tortoise Center, a rescue and breeding facility where scientists are evaluating what they can do to save her species. This special lady will be locked up behind safe areas, which is mainly for her own good. Kunming, the elephant. Elephants are massive beasts, but they're also among the gentlest animals on the earth. In comparison to most species, these mammals are enormous, but they're also kind and obedient. Asian elephants in particular are thought to be the continent's largest mammal. They're found in dry to wet woods and grasslands throughout South and Southeast Asia. Elephants are maintained in captivity in several Asian nations, such as Thailand, and are trained to interact with tourists. Visitors from all around the world pay to meet and bathe with the wild elephants, as well as ride on their backs. Kunming, an elephant in captivity in northern Thailand, was one of those elephants until he was ultimately released. He was doomed to a life of labor, but he was eventually set free, owing to the efforts of those who advocate for the freedom of wild elephants. Min was released into the wild in 2010 as part of the documentary Journey to Freedom by award-winning director Martin Guinness, where he could be part of a herd in the bush around a remote Karen Hill tribal community. It was a touching occasion, and a group of filmmakers were present to catch the exact moment Min was released from his shackles. Spix's macaw. By the time fieldwork to identify and understand the Spix's habitat were completed in the mid-1980s, it was clear that the Spix was on the verge of extinction in the wild. To save the species, conservationists understood that a captive breeding effort would be required. Only 17 captive Spix macaws would be seen at a gathering of conservationist organizations, including the IUCN in 1987, at Laura Park, one of the original Spix holdings in Tenerife, Canary Islands. The current captive population is descended from only 7 wild-caught founder birds, which are thought to have all come from just 2 wild nests that existed after 1982. Pairs originally owned by Birds International in the Philippines, Dr. Hammerly in Switzerland, and Wolfgang Kessling, and a male from the Sao Paulo Zoo. There's around 177 Spix macaws in captivity as of 2022. 83 of these are part of an international breeding program run by the Brazilian government's Natural Heritage Branch. Now, after more than 2 decades of being held in captivity, these bluebirds are flying free once more in Brazil, all thanks to the conservation efforts. See you all next time!